There we go.
Good. We are live. We're just going to give it a minute to let people roll in. No, it looks like we're good. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Natalie and I tonight as we chat about wealth. I hope everyone has a wine or a whiskey in hand. If you don't, you should. And there'll be plenty of time where you can race away and get yourself a drink, because we don't want this to be some staid, boring kind of financial talk. Our point is to make this super conversational, to make you feel welcomed, and kind of touch on all sorts of broad things. So I'm Kristen, General Manager of Hatch, and Natalie, my co-founder, is the head of experience, GM of experience at Hatch. And so she's very much the brains behind the app and the design and everything we've done to date, and I just help keep the wheels running at Hatch. So it's been a really interesting year. If you're already invested in the markets, it will already have been a very interesting year for you as well. So look forward to chatting about investing in general. But just to note that tonight we're probably going to tackle some, beginner, if you're just, what are the barriers that you put up to actually get going with investing? So if you're super advanced or advanced investor, you're most welcome here, but make sure that you ask some questions in the chat, because we will be dealing with mostly beginner topics. So don't want you to be disappointed. Just want to be really clear that we're really trying to tackle some of those barriers tonight that stop people from investing. Just some legal stuff that I'll deal with quickly. What we're talking about tonight is not advice. We're talking just really general smarts around investing. Probably not specific, will not be specific to your situation, and everyone has different financial situations. So please don't take everything we say as personal advice to you. We're really just chatting kind of general best practices. Investing in the share markets has some risk. We're going to go into what risk means. It means that your money can go up and down, but we'll dig into that a little bit. Going into the share markets, most of our investors are looking at least 3 years in the share markets. So that's something that you need to be thinking about. Money you're putting away, it needs time to grow in the share markets. We assume that you've got basics sorted. That means that you don't have lots of scary credit card debt. You probably have some emergency savings, and you've got a job now, so that you've got some income coming in that you can start to put to work. So that's the assumption here. And if we talk about specific companies and funds, really they're just probably popular shares on Hatch, and they're really just a starting point for you to take away and research what's actually best for you. So how we're going to run tonight. It's 6:03. We've got a little under an hour. I'll be watching the time. We talk, we whine, and you ask questions. It's really simple. So you can actually comment and ask your questions on the YouTube channel. So please feel free to do that. Just start commenting whenever, and we can see those comments, and we'll answer your questions. We want this webinar to be practical and helpful, but also really hands-on. So we hope to send you away with kind of great tips to get going and actually to start build some serious wealth. So the theme for tonight is how to take the next step away from saving yourself poor, and that's going to kind of tackle that. But I just want to I want to celebrate kind of everyone that showed up, because you've taken a step to actually talk about investing just by being here tonight, which is pretty big. It's always scary to. You're hidden, which is safe, and you're probably in your homes and hopefully in your pajamas. But it is like, you showed up to something at 6 o'clock at night to talk about money, which is pretty daunting. And so just taking that next step is awesome. You probably recognize you've got some gaps in your financial literacy, as most Kiwis do. So we're here to kind of tackle with some of that. Growing money isn't something we talk a lot about, but we just kind of want to demystify the whole thing. This is a safe place and a great place for you to ask questions, so please do it, because we don't know if we're kind of touching on the right points. Again, we've made some assumptions based on a pre-survey that we did, but please just go ahead and feel free. And there will be a prize for the bravest question tonight. No question is dumb. I'm sure you've heard the saying lots. If you're thinking it, someone else is. So there will be a reward for those that put themselves out there. Investing and growing wealth is for everyone. I just want to start with that. There's no divide that really marks out an investor for a non-investor. So that's kind of the baseline of how we're starting tonight, is that all of us deserve and can grow wealth. And so we want to tackle that. You know, I think it's a journey. And depending, it doesn't matter where you are on that journey, there's tons to learn. Even the greatest investors of all time are still learning. There's no always 100% right decision. All investors make mistakes, even the most experienced ones. Like the most famous investor in the world, Warren Buffett, has also made mistakes. And like anything, we learn over time and build our knowledge and, you know, really empower ourselves. So tonight, our goal is for you to take a step. So that might look like researching more and empowering yourself to learn about how to research a company or which fund to choose, or it might be setting up a goal and a plan. It might be something like actually buying shares or setting up a deposit. But I hope what we're trying to do is not just talk at you all night, but really have you think about what's the step that I need to take to start to take, you know, my money and you know, and growing wealth seriously. So we hope that you step away with that. So I think what we'll do, we'll probably go through some basics. We'll go through some steps that you can take to help you kind of define, oh, that's me, and that's what I'm going to take. That's what I'm going to do next. And it's just like working towards any goal. We kind of break it down so that we make it simple. It doesn't feel so daunting. Remove the barriers and really ease the way forward. So that's what we'll hope. So again, we're going to cover off what it means to put your money to work, savings versus investing, basics of investing. We're going to chat about kind of some Hatch community insights and share some of that aha moments, talk about different barriers. You might relate to some of them. And then, of course, we'll answer some of your questions and lead off with kind of 3 actionable steps that we think you can take. Then we'll end off with a Q&A. If in fact we ever stop talking, because as you can see, we have no issues talking. But again, I can halt conversation and ask questions in between. So remember, prize for the bravest question. So I'm going to leave it with Nat to kick off tonight's theme.
Cool. Hi, everyone. So I think we've been thinking a lot about this idea of saving yourself poor. And the reason for that is quite a few of the people we speak to who've never started investing, or who've started investing but still consider it very much kind of their play money. One of the things is a fundamental, I want to say, misunderstanding about how savings and investing work together, and to sort of grow your money over time and store your money over time. So we thought we'd start with the real fundamentals. What are savings? And I know that seems like an obvious thing, but when you dig into it, it's not nearly as obvious as what we might think it is. So we think of savings generally as short-term money storage. And the reason we think that, I don't know how many people spend a lot of time in their lives thinking about inflation. I certainly didn't until this sort of light bulb moment for me. And I think it's actually been quite a light bulb moment for a lot of people. We speak to a lot of new investors, and they generally say that this was one of the biggest things that kind of got them off the sidelines and got them into being quite seriously putting their money to work in the share markets. So inflation, basically at a base level, means the cost price of things goes up by about 2% a year. That means if you have $1 at the beginning of this year, in January, 1st of January, and the 1st of January next year, it's probably only going to be worth 98 cents. And I'm just going to pause there to let that sink in, because basically $1 now is going to be worth a little bit less this time next year, and then again the year after. Which is actually a really, really big deal when you think about kind of the idea of savings, because what it does mean when you are a saver, and my feeling is that a lot of New Zealanders are very good savers. We talk to a lot of people who've grown up with really, really good savings habits. They put diligently aside money every week or every month, and they believe that by stockpiling this money in a savings account, that will lead to these great outcomes for them. But what they're not taking into account is, with interest rates as they are at the moment, you're lucky to be earning 1.5% interest, which is actually less than the amount things rise every year. So by leaving your money in a bank account, you actually are at a very good chance of ending up with less money at the end of the year, even if it's in a savings account, or even if it's in a term deposit, than what you started with. Even if you end up with the same amount or slightly more, It's only very slightly more. So I think that's a really, really important thing to think about when you're weighing up savings versus investing. So versus the share market. So the share markets are a very, very different beast from your savings account. When you put your money away in a savings account, you know exactly how much there's going to be the next day. And that's why we call it short-term storage, because if you have money set aside, like Kristen mentioned, in an emergency fund, and your car breaks down or your washing machine breaks down, you have that money. You know exactly how much money you've got, and you can take it out and spend it on fixing it. If you put that same money in the share market, they fluctuate. And I think fluctuations get quite I think Kristen's going to go into this a bit more about risks and what they really mean. But fluctuations get a bit of a bad rap, because it basically just means on any given day, you actually don't know how much your money's going to be worth. When you've come from a savings background, that's quite a scary concept. But basically what that means is just give yourself some time. In the short term, things go up and down, but in the long run, over the last 100 or so years, in general, on average, the share markets have gone up by about 8% a year. So, you know, to compare that with your 1.5% you're getting in savings, you're sort of losing out on the extra 6-7%. And all you have to do, if you're going to be doing that, all you have to really get your head around is that uncertainty of not knowing exactly how much your money is going to be worth on any given day. So one of the things that we have also found when it comes to saving versus investing is a surprising fact for a lot of new people who are new to shares is not only share markets a much more effective way to grow your money than leaving it in savings, but actually that the returns you get are quite comparable to property. We're a nation of property lovers. And depending on the time frame you choose or the different calculations people use, you actually tend to find that investing in shares is not only a good investment, it's actually one of the best things you can do to grow your money over time. And if you're comparing it to something like property, you kind of get the same outcomes without the need to deal with tenants or like the real legitimate pain of buying and selling a property. And I think the other thing to keep in mind when you're talking about shares, one of the other big myths with them versus a savings account, you put it in this bank, it feels like this big solid building, you can see it. And same with property, you see the house or the building. And shares have this fundamental feeling of they're not as substantial, but we'd encourage you to think that when you're investing in quality companies, you're actually investing in things that are just as solid as a property or a bank account. It's a business, it's a quality business, it employs people, they sell products that are available in stores or online, they pay rent, they are in offices, you can walk past these substantial offices that house these quality companies that you can invest in. And I think I just wanted to kind of cover off just to finish up with the savings versus investing, and I haven't seen any questions about it, so maybe everyone's covered this off already. But the last thing I wanted to say about shares versus savings is a lot of people start, and I suspect maybe tonight there's a few people based on the survey we sent out earlier who've started dabbling in shares, and it's very easy to do that. There's so many ways you can start to do that now where you start to put $10 away, $100 aside. And one of the other pervasive myths, I think, is the idea that shares are money you can afford to lose. I would question that and say the money you should invest in shares over the long run is money that you can afford to be without for a decent amount of time, maybe 5-10 years. And I think changing that idea that it's your play money, and we'll go in more detail later, that the idea that you're keeping the safe money in savings, when actually that safe money could actually be saying it's not doing any work for you, and it may be even going down in value, versus thinking of the share markets as actually a really potentially a good place to start. And we're never advocates of starting large, of starting to learn by doing and start to grow some serious wealth. And so I just really encourage everyone to think of share markets, to really question kind of the myths we grew up with in New Zealand about how they fit into our money growing habits. I think the second thing that comes with that is we're very quick to think of shares and the share markets as a form of gambling. We hear this quite a bit. People saying, oh, it's kind of the Wild West. I don't know what to invest in. And I think going back to that substantial idea of that shares are just as substantial as property or having your money in a savings account. Yes, you can gamble in the share markets. You can gamble anywhere. You can gamble by going and seeing a property sight unseen and finding out that it's a dodgy building. But if you actually have a different strategy when you're investing in anything, the same rules apply. So once again, I'd encourage you to kind of question that maybe deep-rooted belief you have about where the share markets fit in your money strategy. And what we did actually before this is we went to our investors club. We have about 5,000-6,000 people in there now, and just kind of asked them what some of their light bulb moments were when it came to investing. And I think it's really important to say that these people are very similar to your common everyday New Zealander. They're not financial gurus. They don't have crazy MBA degrees. Some of them do. They don't have any sort of hidden source of knowledge. They're just everyday people and who've realized that there's a smarter way of putting your money to work. So I just thought I'd read out a couple of the replies we got. I think Conrad was the first one saying, his light bulb moment was realizing that I've never heard anybody ever saying I am rich today because I put as much money as possible into my pension fund. Kevin said I had some money on term deposit earning 2% interest, which is a joke. My portfolio is currently way better than that, so I'm really happy with my decision to join Hatch. Gifford said, I realize if you're in the second tax bracket, you really need to invest in order to get rich, which I thought was kind of a really nice way of putting it, that when you actually kind of work your way up and you're like, I'm still not rich. And then Nick said, I realized I couldn't save my way rich. So this saving versus investing thing is a real big moment for people that when they really get it, it's for a lot of us was the reason why we actually started to take money out of savings for the long term and really started to think of our savings account as a short-term thing. So I'll pass it back to Kristen to go over some of the fundamentals before we continue with some of the steps that you could take to kind of reconsider where shares fit in your money life.
Awesome. Thanks, Nat. Hey, I'm just going to tackle 2 questions about Hatch because I realized I didn't share a lot about Hatch initially. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll jump into investing fundamentals before 3 steps that we're going to share with you. So the first question was, apart from, why is Hatch different than ASB, or apart from US share markets, what is it that makes you different? And I would like to just start with the most obvious is that we're a group of technologists. So we've all come from technology, which takes a very different approach to solving problems than financial services. So there's a reason that people aren't investing. There's a reason that people aren't doing things, and that banking sites and investing sites are full of jargon. And there's a reason that they speak in a different language, and that we find insurance complex and T's and C's are so long. And it's because we've got an industry of people that first they are risk averse. So they're like so scared to do anything wrong because there's obviously big penalties when you do. But also they're in the industry, like they've lost connection to real human beings and our problems. And so they make you feel dumb. And that's why everything is too hard. They also come from financial services. So they don't know how to actually make your life easier with technology, which is why lots of apps and financial solutions are just clunky and messy. So what we've done is we've brought a group of really smart people together that have come from technology, and we're passionate about solving customers' problems in the financial services space with tech. So our first kind of iteration was offering access to world-class investments, which we very much believe was a great start, was the US share market. So how do we allow Kiwis to invest easily? So through technology, affordably, again, the use of technology, and delightfully. And that's just, again, how can we solve problems in a different way and help you along your journey? And so we've done that. As a very beginning was the US share markets. We'll look to expand to other markets and other products, but really I would view Hatch as kind of your technology platform. For it doesn't sound very sexy, I apologize, but behind it is a group of really passionate people that are walking hand in hand with our investors. If you were to write a note into Hatch or on our Facebook club or whatever, like, we're there with you 100% of the journey. We treat you like humans. We recognize we spend a lot of time talking to our investors, talking to real Kiwis about money challenges. And so we're building our investing platform with and for you. And I'd say that's a pretty big difference between an incumbent. That said, we are best of both worlds because our primary investor is Kiwi Wealth, and that's a sister company of Kiwi Bank. So we've got the backing and resource where required of the Kiwi family, which is pretty awesome. But we're a group of really kind of renegades that really want to shake this industry up. So that's, I hope I've detailed Hatch a little bit. And Silas asked, can we compare, like inside Hatch, you'll have your portfolio and your trend line of growth because you're constructing your own portfolio. Can that be compared against major indices or, inflation? And so it's almost like tracking how you're going or against other Hatch investors. And that's an awesome idea. So I'll make sure that we get that into the product team. In fact, Nat's here, so that's fantastic. And so I get that because it's like, how am I going? And how does my portfolio and my growth of my portfolio compare to others in the industry? So really great. And we'll look at kind of tackling that. So I just wanted to quickly go over some investing fundamentals, and then again, we'll jump into first step. So what is investing? Investing is really just buying something for future return. So you're investing, you're taking some money, and instead of spending it, you're giving it to someone else. But the deal is that you give me a return on my money, and that is investing. So it's almost like I'm kind of not having the reward of spending the money, my hard-earned money today, but I'm going to put it away, give it to someone else, and in the future, that money is going to be worth more. So that's kind of the basic premise of investing and trading versus investing, because we did see a little bit more, like New Zealand in general saw an increase in trading activity over the lockdown. Why? A lot of people were home and bored. Secondly, I think the markets were doing crazy things. So you've got these traders coming in that are looking to take advantage of prices that have kind of dropped, and therefore shares are on sale. That said, the difference between a trader and investor is a trader's constantly flipping it. Like, think of them like they're looking for deals and they're buying and they're selling and they're looking to take advantage of kind of the price fluctuations and come out on top. However, it should be said that only 1% of traders win over the long run, because your fees go up. Like, every time you're doing something, it costs money. It's very hard to actually know knowledge and recognize what's happening ahead of time. It's kind of a big guess. We know that the share markets go up over time, but if Apple's price is going to tank or, skyrocket tomorrow is really just a guess. And when you watch these investors chat, it's anybody's guess. And so I think that's really important distinction. Whereas investing is saying, I back this business, I'm investing in this company or this sector, or just the general market, because I recognize that over a long period of time, it's going to increase. So it's a little bit more boring, and as it should be. Investing is for the long run. And trading is really spending a lot of time trying to gain short-term gains. Let's just chat quickly about risks. So you'll hear, oh, investing is risky. And it is riskier than a bank account, but we've talked about where bank account's going to get you and savings is going to get you. It's not far. And so I think really we have to recognize, we have to accept risk. You accept risk every day when you're doing interesting things or going on adventures or taking that new job. You're out of your comfort zone and you're taking risk for, to better yourself or to stretch yourself or challenge yourself. And investing is the same thing. We've got to take a little bit of risk so that our money over the long term works for us instead of compared to a savings account. So risk, just really view it as time. And so really, if you're investing in something slightly riskier like shares, just think, look, it's just means that it's going to go up and down more than say something that's less risky. So the longer that it's in, those fluctuations tend to even out. And we know that the share markets do rise over time. But like we saw recently, there can be huge drops. Some years can be huge increases. Some years can be drops. But over time, if we look at the history of the share markets, they've returned on average 13% a year. So that's a pretty good return that you're going to get. And so risk, really just think of it as lots of ups and downs, but not panicked about it. I've just got to think of this as more time in the market, or more time before I need to get that money back. Spending versus investing, this shouldn't be an or thing. We believe, Kiwis, when we talked to a lot of Kiwis when we were starting Hatch and figuring out, their challenges with investing, it was very much like, I don't want to be rich and I don't want to be wealthy, and this real sense of like, I just want to live a well-balanced life. Well, that's kind of why we're doing this. None of us are really doing it to, well, maybe some of us to like get private jets, but I think most Kiwis just want to have like a really well-balanced life. And when we want to quit the job, we want to quit the job, or when we want to go on holiday with our kids, we can. We also want to have a nice life when we retire and go adventure. So I think it's very much not like you can also do those things now. And I think the best tip to tackle there is to pay yourself first. So when you get paid, make sure that you've got automatic money that's disappearing out of your bank account, and then you've got the rest to spend and to go on holidays and to reward yourself for the hard work that you do. But I think it's really important you pay yourself first. You won't even miss that money, and so that it's an and situation, not an or situation. And then finally, I'll just see if I've got any others. Oh, best advice for teenagers new to investing. How cool. Yeah, let's talk about some of those steps. Best advice is to find your community. So join a forum. Don't listen to everything everyone says, but just join it to start to understand some of the lingo and the language and the share markets, and then also read some blogs and resources. There's some fantastic literature out there that I'm going to get Christine to post a couple of our blogs. We've got a blog in the YouTube comments. We've got blogs about podcasts, about books, about newsletters and sites that you can visit. So look, just try to suck up all the information that you can when you're starting investing. And then the next step is when you have a little bit and you don't need that money right away, is just to get started, which Nat's going to tackle in a minute. I just want to end on what are the share markets and some basics. What's on the share markets? Share markets are an exchange. Just think of them as a market where people are buying and selling things. This just happens to be a market, the share markets, be it the New York Stock Exchange or the New Zealand Stock Exchange, where companies have come and said, we need to raise some money. Our options are we can go to the bank and we can ask for some money. Or we can sell a piece of our company to the public and get some money that way. And that's an IPO, an initial public offering. And you might have heard about, some really big name IPOs. We're kind of waiting for Airbnb to come on this year. So anyway, the point is that these companies need money to continue to grow. And quite often they will go to the share markets, make their companies public. They're going from private company where they hide a lot of the details and their revenue and how they make money to actually public, where they legally are obliged to share all that information with you, how much money they have, how much they owe, things like how they're performing, how much they're selling, how many shares that they've got that people are investing in, all that sort of stuff. So I think going public is now allows us to invest in these companies and benefit from their success. So an example might be an Apple or an Amazon or a Tesla, for example. We can buy into these companies now on these markets and really back kind of some of these really pioneering companies or tech companies or sectors, it might be healthcare or cannabis or green energy, and kind of really look to, the trends of tomorrow and invest in those. Finally is we're talking quite a bit about companies, and think about companies that you believe in, and just think of it as buying a business. When you're investing, you're like, I would buy that business because I, really back them. Like I wear all of their stuff, and I know lots of people are too. And so I'm going to, invest in that business, recognizing they're going to grow. That can be quite daunting to start, which is very quickly why people choose to go down the fund route. And that's just a basket of companies. And so that the funds might represent like a basket of technology companies or healthcare, or it just might be all of the companies that are listed on the share markets. And so you're just kind of invested in the share markets. But I know that's kind of going a little too deep. I think Christine is going to do a quick link in the YouTube channel of what's an ETF as well, and kind of go from there. But let's get back to the steps. Nat, over to you.
Cool. And I think, who was it that asked about teenagers? That's Farzad. I think that this will be a very good first step for you, as with everyone else. I would say the best advice, non-advice, the best tip for anyone at any age is just start. So let's start with just start as the next step. As Kristen said earlier, everyone today has turned up, and I know that sounds like don't want it to sound like, oh, well done for tuning up. But actually, what we have found after hundreds of hours of research is just tuning up to something like this is one of the biggest indicators that you will go on to actually do something that really does impact your lifestyle in the future. So I think it's really important to recognize that this is probably, you've already taken the hardest step. As silly as that sounds, it's absolutely true. So let's say the next step, and I really want to challenge everyone to think about this if they haven't started, or if they've started and you're just thinking, I'm just putting a really small amount in because I'm unsure. I would encourage you to really seriously consider this next step of actually just starting. And the reason for that is, as Kristen's mentioned, and I talked about a bit with savings, the time thing. The more time you can give yourself, the more time you have to start small and learn heaps of stuff, the more time you give yourself for your money to grow, the sooner you start. And we'll talk, and Kristen's going to follow up this with another step. If you genuinely don't feel like now's a good time to start, or you're not quite in the position, or I mean, we're living still in a worldwide global pandemic, there's some other options, but I'm going to start with the case for just starting. So there's three, like we say, we talk to a lot of New Zealanders, and what we've really found is while most people feel very alone in the sense of there seems to be the sense that there's all these other people have got given this amazing financial education that I've missed out on. But what we've actually found is quite often most of the reasons why people don't start are surprisingly, ridiculously similar. And so the reason why I think that this very unobvious next step, and I'm talking just start as in just start tonight or just start tomorrow, just start. The reasons why people think that may not be, did you want to butt in, Kristen? We're trying not to interrupt each other, so we're going to try and give each other a signal, and then we're misinterpreting ourselves. So one of the reasons, the first reason is that I'm still learning reason, and like Kristen's touched on, and actually we've already had a few comments. I think Logan, you mentioned it, and Lonick about the offering a demo account. Tricking yourself into thinking that one day you'll magically know enough to start. Like I really want everyone who is in that boat to really stop and think, will you? Like Kristen said earlier, Warren Buffett, who is well known in the world as one of the world's best investors. He has a huge company and he is idolized by basically the entire Hatch community. He really did a big muck up this year. He invested in airlines just before the global shutdown. He is well regarded as the absolute best investor that ever lived, and he's still mucked up. So I just encourage you to think, if he still doesn't know enough to get it right every time, what hope do you have if you've never started? And I think one of the other big misconceptions about investing is you actually have to get it right all the time. You just need to get it right more than you get it wrong. And that's actually a really low standard, a low bar with some of the investment options available through the share markets, where you actually, like Kristen talked a lot about, exchange traded funds, very terrible name, world's worst name, finance industry, terrible disconnect from humans, but get over the jargon on that one because it's one well worth knowing. That really does help you get it right, or have a much higher chance of having enough of the investments in that fund getting it right that you actually taken the decision off your shoulders. So very much if you're still in the I'm still learning and you aren't actively spending hours a day researching, I think the idea that one day somehow you're suddenly going to get around to it, I mean, I'm the same when it comes to going to a gym. One day I'll do it. I'm still just got to work up whatever it is that I need to do that's somehow magically going to get me to the gym every day. Never going to happen. Give up on that idea if that's not something you're already doing. And that's actually fine, because there's a really good way to just start and learn as you go. There's another big reason why people don't get started, and that's that fear of making the wrong decision. And it's actually quite interesting. I tie it back now a lot to making the wrong decision about buying shoes versus making the wrong decision about buying a car. Very different scale of decision making. If I buy the wrong shoes and I don't know, I bought them on sale, they're $50. The worst that can happen is I lose $50. That is literally the worst thing that can happen if I make the wrong decision. There's something about investing, and I know the word investing itself feels very big and scary and quite outside the normal of everyday life. But really all it is taking $50 or $100 to start, and I'll go into this in a bit soon, and just realizing the scale of that decision. It's not a big one. It's the kind of decision we make every time we go out for dinner. It's the decision we make when we buy a $50, $100 purchase. In the scale of our lives, it is not a decision worth putting off because we're worried that we're going to get it wrong. And then the last reason that sort of puts people off starting now, and the reason why it feels like not a good option, is because you don't have enough money. And while that is actually on the surface a really, really legitimate reason, we all got a lot of, cost of living very high. We all like to take holidays. Holidays is one of the biggest reasons why people we speak to tend to want to delay investing. Like, but I don't want to give up my holidays, and I don't want to give up my wines. I invest, I'm drinking wine, I love holidays. It is actually most of us have a little bit more spend money than we potentially realize. And Kristen and I, we like to shop, we like to go to day spas, and we also like to invest. And I think the really, really lesson I would encourage people to kind of think about is if you do have enough money to kind of go out for dinner, or go get a manicure done, or whatever it is, you probably actually do have enough money to start investing. And the reason why it's important is the same reason why we talk about time, having a long time, is you're buying yourself time by just starting quicker and learning those lessons early on with smaller amounts, so that you're not waiting until kind of you're sort of hitting later in life and going, oh no, I actually am not quite where I thought I was because my savings account turns out didn't return me a ton of money, and now I've got 10 years left till I retire, and I don't think that panic is just like, let's just avoid it by starting now, starting with small money, and kind of making sure that I'm still learning, or I'm scared of making the wrong decision, or I don't have enough money. Let's take all those off the table and give you a really easy way to start now. And the way we do that is we often talk about almost like the $100 rule. And what that means is take that $100 or that $50 and don't think about it as investing money. One of the tricks we have learned, and this is a tried and true method taken on by quite a few people now who are new to investing, is to scrap any idea of getting rich off that $50 or $100. This is not your investment money. This is not you growing your money. This is you investing in your education. It's not about making the right decision. It's not about putting money to work in a way that's going to end up making you rich. It's literally money that you would spend on other stuff and using it to, as you would buy a book or pay to go along to a course, just starting with that money and actually starting and using it to learn. When we say this, quite often the pushback we get from people is, oh gosh, I didn't realize I could start that small. But actually, I'm not after $100 worth of returns. Like, you're all smart people, you all have good careers. $100 isn't going to change your life, and I think that's no one's saying it will, but I think the really key thing to understand there is if you start with $100, you're not staying with $100. That $100 buys you $100 worth of education. Actually, it probably buys you a lot more than that worth of education, but that doesn't stop you ramping up as quickly as you want as you get more comfortable into the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, which is actually how it works. It's kind of that acorn, start small, grow big, because there is a very interesting mental barrier there when it comes to, I don't want to start big, because starting big is probably in many cases not a great idea. You haven't had any experience in this thing. It's sort of like going for a CEO position straight out of university. You want to ramp your way up. You want to learn the basics. You want to start small, but I think given our culture these days of instant gratification, starting small feels like, oh, but it's not going to give me anything. But it absolutely will. It'll give you an education, and I think we cannot drum that home enough. And tying it back to kind of the making a shoe decision is, it also means you don't have to make the right decision because you can afford to lose that money. You would otherwise be spending it on dinner. And one of the things that I weirdly, my brain connects things weirdly, but one of the things that you cannot learn in a textbook, if you genuinely think you're going to learn somehow all this stuff about investing that's going to get you to the point that you're ready to go, you will never learn how you are going to react emotionally when things happen in the share market until your money is in the share market. Which is why, Lonick, when we talk about offering demo accounts, one of the reasons we made the active decision not to is when you're playing with fake money, you make totally different decisions. It's not your money. You're not invested in it. You'll take all that and put it straight onto, I mean, if it was me, I'd put it straight onto Tesla. That's not what I would do if it was $10,000 of my money and it was the only $10,000 I had. You actually have to feel those emotions. And I was watching Mick Fanning, our office is obsessed with surfing. I'm not, but I watched him and being attacked by a shark the other day and him punching the shark. And it just made me think, it's so funny. We all want to think of how we're going to react when things happen, but you actually don't know until you're in the situation. Whether it be a shark attack or whether your investment's gone down in value, you actually have to go through that feeling and learn it. And the best way you can do it is to start small and give yourself a ton of time. And once again, our hatchlings have come to the party, and Ben mentioned on Investors Club. It's funny, we'll talk about this later. They are all just dying for more people to join them. People who invest just get very excited about it, and their goal is to get more and more people doing it. But he said learning about it was the reason he started. And then just practicing to see if it works as a form of wealth creation, because we can harp on all we like about saving yourself poor, but there's nothing like seeing it in action for yourself to kind of get that memo. So I think Ben had a really strong strategy there. And I think we notice it a lot with our data is that a lot of people start really small. They're putting in, $50, $100, and then bam, they just start ramping up, and you can start to see as they get more confident. And I'm the same. I started with $500 back in the day where it was really expensive to trade. And I have, over 15 years, built up a portfolio that I never would have expected from that $500 just by starting small and ramping it up over time. So I've kind of gone through a lot of the actionable stuff. I just wanted to cover off, like we've mentioned before, and once again, we cannot drum it home enough, is investing is just backing a business. It's not about buying and selling widgets and numbers and charts. It's finding a business that you love, and it's a solid, stable, it's a substantial investment, and investing in that. And if you're taking that $100, I would once again think, just as with shoes, how much research would you feel like you really need to put in? How much you really need to know to invest that in educating yourself? And I did notice, just to finish up before passing back to Kristen, we have had a few questions about what's the best research we can do, what chart should I be looking at? And we do cover a bunch of the stuff in our free Getting Started course. But two really simple ways, because we all understand what it's like. It's one thing, again, for us to say, take that $100, but then suddenly you're faced with a wall of options. And as much as humans like to think we love choice, we actually really, after a while, really don't like choice. We kind of just want to be told. So there's two really simple ways that we've actually found most people start investing. And I'm one of the first types, and I used to feel really ashamed of how I invested because I thought it wasn't a legitimate strategy. And since then, I've learned that they have a label for it, so it's fine. And I call it using your unfair advantage. And we hear this story a lot. People work in industries or they have hobbies that they understand. And to you will be sitting there thinking, oh, well, it's just common sense. But like if you are in one of the examples we use a lot, if you've worked in a hospital and you're suddenly noticing you're stocking certain brands, I don't know that. I'm not working in that hospital. You're starting to pay attention to this this change in your employment environment. People who love watching makeup gurus on YouTube, you might see a brand taking off. Yoga fans, we have a lot of them in the office. They quite often are talking about, the equipment people are using, the exercise gear people are wearing. Gamers is another one. You start to notice which companies are constantly pushing out the best games. That's not as common knowledge as you might suspect. We often underestimate the amount we know. That's not actually just something that everyone has access to. So I think it's really, really important to sort of start by just looking around you and give yourself a starting point. And once again, we're going back to that $100. How risky is it to start to look at using that to educate yourself with the company that may not be the best company, although like I would encourage you to sort of really do a little bit of analysis on, does it really feel like it's going to be growing over time? Am I really noticing a trend? And start to push yourself to get into that habit. The other way that people tend to start, and this is the more traditional way that people assume everyone's starting, is by using their research skills. This is where all the charts and analysis comes in. And I think we all have that friend, and my sister's this person, gets the best price on everything, does this like immense amount of research. She tosses up different companies, she's trying different brands. That brain is a brilliant brain, and it's a totally different strategy where you might find it actually quite interesting to go into the annual reports or the investor center of a different company. And these companies, they all have to have it. If you're selling shares on the share markets, you actually legally have to have a section or a way of investors to learn about your company. Sounds really dull. There are financial reports in there, but there's also profiles on key players in the company, CEOs. You can learn about their history. You can read their plan for the year. You will find, if you're someone who really likes kind of doing that analysis, some really interesting stuff in there. Who is their management team? What have they achieved in the past? What's the CEO talking about? Do they have money in the bank ready to withstand various things? Again, starting with that $100, doesn't matter if you just start reading those reports and you don't get it all covered. No, it's $100. This is not investment money. This is education money. Our friend Investing with Tom, he does a great series on YouTube. He's got about 10,000 followers, probably more than that now. One of the things that I asked him when I spoke to him the other day is, all of this is fine and good, but literally where do I start? There's like 4,000 companies on Hatch. What do I do? And he says a really good cheat is to look up the likes of Warren Buffett, best investor in the world. You can actually find lists online of all the companies that he's invested in, and it's just a great starting point to kind of get a list and start doing that, going to their investor center and start getting an idea of something that you would be willing to invest $100 of your education in. So yeah, on to Kristen. Sorry, that was a long one, but I thought it was worth it.
No, that was good. That was good. That was just to get started. And I wanted to add to the research piece again, to reiterate Nat's, there's the sense of kind of this common sense. So to really think, I think, someone said one time, another really famous investor was like, if I were just to know what to invest in, I'd just ask a 5-year-old, because or watch a 5-year-old for the day. And that could be that they're chewing a certain brand of bubble gum, or they're drinking Coca-Cola. That actually sounds terrible for a 5-year-old. But the point is that when you look to your next generation or young people, you get a sense of, TikTok, which sadly we can't invest in. But you get a sense of the brands that are completely in their world, and some of the brands that are, very much going to be the leaders of tomorrow. If someone were to look 10 years ago at this kind of incredible rise of Facebook, Netflix, think about how our TV watching habits have changed. Peloton is moving people, especially in the lockdown, away from working out in gyms to working out online on bikes. And so there's this general kind of common sense of who is this company? What are their competitors? How are they innovating? What's their kind of real competitive advantage? And are they changing our behaviors? That's probably a really good start. And then the other thing was the numbers. And that's what Nat was referring to, is those that have real analytical brains, starting to crunch numbers. Christine's going to post another blog, which we've got talk about some of the more popular ratios. And so for those that want to have a little test run, do that. Another really great tool is Google. And a lot of analysts have already done the hard work for you. And there's also sites that have done the hard work for you. So the other day, I think I found myself, is PayPal a good buy? Because I just wanted to see what was out there and what people were saying. And it was relatively consistent. I learned a lot about the company. I learned what the analysts thought about the company. And I got at least a general sense of, do I want to invest in PayPal right now? And I'm choosing not to, because the general thinking was that not yet. Yes, but not yet. And so just little things like that. It's not as hard as you think it is. There's another question. I'll just quickly attack some of them before step number 2. Recognizing the time. But it was like, if I had a chunk of money, how might I split that across my portfolio? If you were to ask Warren Buffett, he'd say, put it all in the S&P 500 and just forget about it. So he's like a huge fan of that. That's the 500 biggest companies in the US. And those are all the brands that you will know very well. And so it certainly...
Sorry. I just wonder if
Say
Kristen
again?
can post a link to that specific fund if someone's signed up to Hatch. We can post a link to
Yeah.
it on Hatch. So it's easy to click on and
Yeah.
add to your watch list. And
So, we're not advocating for that, but what he's getting at is if you plunk your money in the share markets and it's just a really broad fund that covers a ton of companies and just forget about it, it's going to track and these companies are going to grow over time because they're going to innovate and become more productive and so on and so forth. So I think just keep it really simple. And so he would say 100%. A lot of our investors do like the 70 to 80% rule in funds. And again, don't overcomplicate it. What are two or three funds that cover generally the world? You know, like it might be something that covers the US, it might be a New Zealand fund, and it might be a worldwide kind of index fund. So again, you're kind of covered in lots of areas. If a particular sector or a country tends to tank, you're going to have a lot of other stuff in there to kind of buffer those losses. So keeping that really majority of your investing super simple, don't overcomplicate it. And then that, like, depending on that 40 to 20 to 40%, that's where it's like, what are the things that I'm going to back to grow tomorrow and try and kind of beat the general market? So that might be in a really specific fund, maybe something that covers like biotech or robotics or social media or e-commerce. It might be something that you might know about healthcare, or it might be companies that, again, you're backing. For Nat, it would be Tesla. For me, it might be, another few stocks. And so those are things where you can actually really start to empower yourself and learn about investing is kind of in that remainder of your money. And there's no rush. Someone else asked, when's the best time to sell? Probably put out 3 times to sell, general knowledge. One is if you've made a mistake. If you've invested in something and you've made a mistake, sell. Because really you should look at investing as backing a business for the long term. And if you kind of got caught up in some weird hype and you're like, go ahead and sell. The second time that you might consider selling some or of your investment is if the price skyrockets. So if there's like huge momentum or some weird market thing happens, there's like real, and something spikes incredibly, you might consider selling some of your investment and taking those profits. For the most part, the markets are pretty efficient and don't do that very often. But if you find yourself in a scenario where the price just goes crazy, you might want to consider selling some of that to get out of it. That's the second. And the third is if for some reason the fundamentals, and I'm sorry, that's a terrible word, but if the business doesn't make sense anymore, so like something has shifted, let's say Facebook. You want to say Facebook?
I was going to say cruise ships, maybe.
Cruise ships might be one. So, okay, so that might be a time when you're like, wow, right now, that's an interesting time, and it's like, should I be getting out of cruise ships? Warren Buffett, in the end, did get out of airlines. He actually got rid of all of his airlines. And so that signal of this change that we're going through is going to probably last a long time. There's going to be some winners and some losers. So something fundamentally has changed. Facebook might be like this massive run of all advertisers, like an actual seriously, people start to boycott Facebook, or there are all of a sudden new regulations placed and the game has changed, and Facebook can't make money at how they're making money right now. So those are really the only times you should sell a stock. You shouldn't be selling because you need the money. That's not money that should be in the share markets. Quick reminder there. A couple specific Hatch questions. We don't offer New Zealand stocks yet, but we will. So we're looking at New Zealand funds in the near future, and then New Zealand stocks in kind of the medium long-term future. Are there any jobs going? Flip us a message. Pretty cool. I think that's a brave question actually right there. Yeah, so flip us an email.
A welcome question.
Yeah. No, that's cool. So do that. Send us an email. Are you planning on providing joint accounts? I'm going to let Nat do that quickly. How does Hatch return dividends? Dividends are paid and they land in US dollars in your Hatch account. So they're there for you to reinvest. And there was another quick one about annual ETF management fees. That's just included when you invest in an exchange traded fund on Hatch. There's a fee associated with that. So for the it might be like 0.3%. The annual fee is priced into that. It priced into the price of the fee. So you just never see it. It's already priced in. So you don't need to worry about any other weird fees. There was a question about how I withdraw money. So I'm just whipping through these quickly, looking at the time. Oh my goodness. Is that you can just click withdraw. There's a small fee, a foreign exchange fee to bring your money back to New Zealand, but it's fairly simple. Good. We'll leave it there. I want to talk about the second step. First step was just to start and do something. And if you've come in your brain why you can't start, what I'd like you to do is to make a plan and put very specifically what is it. And that could be starting to invest or starting to seriously invest or starting your financial literacy or starting something. But whatever the thing is that you need to do to break, investing and start building serious wealth, get on that journey, make the plan of what conditions need to happen. Like, what does the world and your life need to look like for you to do that? If it's you need to learn a bit more, start that today and make a date. You're like, I've learned enough to do something, and actually get started. If it's that market needs to look a little bit different, just write that down. Exactly, like get really specific with yourself and challenge yourself why you're waiting. But at least, you're starting to write a plan about those longer term goals and set yourself to account, much like you would if you want to lose weight and you're going to the gym. Make sure you get very specific with yourself as to why you're not starting today and what exactly do the conditions need to look like to start. Now I'm going to leave that with Nat for step 3 or anything else that's come to mind.
Yeah, step 3, super, super quick. And I think the thing about the plan, just to follow up from that, is you should have a plan anyway when you're investing. And I think to overarch all those 3 reasons Kristen said why you would ever sell, overarching all of that is because it's in your plan. And your plan should be, for example, me, when I bought Tesla shares, I want to hold them for 20 years. It doesn't matter what happens, ignore it, because I want to hold them for 20 years. Maybe if the company falters, and I think that having that plan is a really good starting point for setting you up for success, and really itemizing out what needs to happen. And like Kristen said, if it's that the share markets need to drop, you think they're going to drop, what would they need to drop to? If it's, I need to know X, Y, and Z about this, what am I doing to do it? And I suppose the third step is, I'll do it very, very quickly because it's kind of a complementary one to that, is one of the things, and I've stolen this directly from a guy called the Barefoot Investor who writes a book that a lot of Hatch investors really like, is set a date, an actual date, like a date with your partner or a date with friends, have a nice dinner, have wine, and actually make the date about getting started, or what the thing is that you need to plan. And one of the reasons why that's important is because you'll never make time until you make time. It's very easy for us all to pretend we somehow we're going to find magically this time in our lives, but it's not going to happen. You also turn it into a fun social thing. It's a way to kind of hang out with people and take that weight of making the decision off your shoulders. You are learning together. You can bring something to the table. The date might be something around, let's all go and come to the table with one company that we think we're really interested in, with some information about why it's interesting. The date might be about, hey, we're all going to put that first $100 in tonight together. The date might be, we're going to look at each other's watch list. Whatever it is, doing it with friends or with your partner has been a really successful approach for a lot of investors, because we recognize this is a big thing. It feels like a big thing. I'm telling you, it's not really. It's just a series of small steps. But having friends there to support you, it makes it more fun. I've seen it all the time, that you have people to chat to about it, but also that you are kind of holding each other to account, just like having a gym buddy or a running buddy. I obviously use that example a lot. I need one. That you actually are starting to do this together and you're bouncing off each other and you're learning together. It makes it more fun. Guarantee it's going to be really, really fun as you get up and running. People love it once they get started. And just to end that part with 2 minutes to go, one of the things that we've just released a referral program for our investors where they can refer friends. So if you have someone who's already on Hatch, hit them up to get a little bit of a $10 top up when you get started. But we asked them why they want to refer friends, and the common reason would be because they also get $10. But the absolute top, double the number of the next best option was our investors want more people to chat to about shares. People are obsessed. They're really, really hanging out to share their knowledge with you and to learn from you. So find someone who's already invested, bring them out for dinner, find people who've never invested, take them out for a drink, or get them to buy you a drink, whatever, and actually just think of it as a fun activity and make that step together. 1 minute to go.
Yeah, and I'm going to cover off the last question. Christine, I'm just going to ask you to paste a couple links below. There's are my shares and money safe? So how can we ensure your stuff is safe? We use, we've done huge amounts of due diligence on our partners. We use, fantastic US companies. For example, our custodian is Citigroup, largest, recognized global award-winning custodian. So that's one example, but she's going to post a link on how do I know my shares and money are safe. We're also backed again by Kiwi Wealth, and I can't underline that enough. With respect to, we don't have some shares, Vanguard shares on Hatch. If they're mutual funds, they can't be sold outside of New Zealand. So if there is an ETF that you want, a fund that you want on Hatch, please email hello@hatchinvest.nz and ask for it, and we can request it.
Just to follow up from that, it tends to be that most of those index funds that are not listed on the share markets, they have a corresponding ETF that is, so we can point you in the right direction, that they are exactly the same. The only difference between a fund and an ETF is it's traded on the share markets. It's a fund that's traded on the share markets rather than going directly to the fund manager. Underlying investments, exactly the same quite often between them, so get in touch. Our team, we have a dedicated team of 4 or 5 people now who are on hand to help with all of this stuff. Love helping, happy to share any knowledge. So don't be put off if you can't find something that you want.
And then the last blog I'm going to get Christine to post is about taxes. Taxes are super simple with Hatch. So she's going to post a tax blog that can kind of help you get started. So super simple, keep it there. Reach out to hello@hatchinvest.nz for any questions. We're always available to chat. And I'd like to award the prize to, I've got it here, sorry.
It's jumping while you're figuring it out. MP, do I think Hatch commission might be reducing for higher quantities? I don't know where you got 10% from. Our fee is a $3, basically a $3 flat fee to buy or sell up to 300 shares. And then it's just 1 cent a share afterwards. So for higher quantities of shares, you're paying very, very, very minuscule percentage. I don't know where the 10% came from, but if anyone's sitting there thinking our fees are high, we dropped them from $8 to $3 a few months ago now. So definitely worth taking a look. Nothing's hidden with our fees. They're all upfront. You just pay for what you use. There's no subscription fees. We think it's probably one of the fairest ways of charging. So really happy to have a conversation if you don't think it is. But yeah, get rid of any ideas of 10%.
Awesome. And the winner is Andrew Harley. So Andrew, can you reach out? Because good start with some serious money, Andrew. So hey, if you can reach out to hello@hatchinvest and just say I was the winner of the webinar, we'll go ahead and set you up with a Hatch top up. So thanks everyone. We're like 2 minutes over. Sorry. This is what wine and wealth does. Really thank you for coming and joining us tonight. And, we'll see you again next time. And please reach out with any more questions. Bye.
Oh, bye. I want to ask one more. Mark, we'll answer yours in the chat. It's not what you think.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.